In 1929, Colorado filmmaker Ira Current used 16mm black and white film to capture steam trains climbing over the difficult Ute Pass between Colorado Springs, Colorado, and the gold mining community of Cripple Creek. The film, courtesy of the old Colorado City History Center and Channel 17 in Colorado Springs, showed Midland Terminal passenger and freight trains on the former Colorado Midland Railway west out of Colorado Springs. Back in Colorado Springs, the old Colorado Midland Roundhouse was sold to Van Briggle Pottery. Across the parking lot, one of the railroad's shop buildings remained standing, converted into the Ghost Town Museum. The Colorado Midland Railway Company was incorporated on November 23, 1883. The vision was to build a standard gauge railroad through the Rocky Mountains west out of Colorado Springs to Salt Lake City, Utah. Actual construction of the railroad did not begin for more than 2 years until enough money could be raised. Construction began westward out of Colorado Springs on what was called the Eastern Division in 1886. In Manitou Springs, west of Colorado Springs, the railroad began its ascent over the treacherous Ute Pass before continuing on through Woodland Park, Divide, and Leadville. Climbing the foothills above Manitou Springs, the Colorado Midland passed through 2 tunnels, Tunnel Number 1 and Tunnel Number 2. The railroad then turned north to cross Engelman Canyon on a high iron viaduct. Many timbers used to line the inside of the tunnels have fallen. The collapsing tunnels have begun to close. The standard gauge Colorado Midland zigzagged its way up Ute Pass. Evidence of the old railroad right-of-way remained on either side of the modern-day U.S. Highway 24. Also named the Midland Freeway, US 24 was rebuilt over the pass to interstate standards during the 1960s. Ute Pass was named for the Ute Indians, who crossed this mountain to get to the natural hot spring pools in what became Manitou Springs. A connection to the gold mining boom town of Cripple Creek was built south off the Colorado-Midland main line at Divide. The Midland Terminal Railway was built standard gauge from Divide to Cripple Creek in 1895. In 1917, the bankrupt Colorado-Midland Railway was reorganized under the same ownership as the Midland Terminal Railway. During the First World War, the United States Railroad Administration rerouted an abundance of freight and passenger rail traffic off the Rio Grande and onto the Colorado Midland. The Colorado Midland was shorter in route miles than the Denver and Rio Grande. This substantial surge in bridge traffic began in 1918 for the war effort. Very quickly, the Colorado Midland was operating beyond its capacity. Severe rail traffic congestion inspired the United States Railroad Administration to move all bridge traffic off the Colorado Midland and back onto the longer but more capable Denver and Rio Grande. The Colorado Midland struggled with what local traffic it had left. Although the armistice of November 11, 1918 ended the war, bringing peace to the United States, the damage done to the Colorado Midland was irreversible. The Colorado Midland Railroad Company was officially abandoned on May 21, 1922. The Midland Terminal Railway continued to operate over the old Colorado Midland from Colorado Springs to Divide, where it switched on to its original line to Cripple Creek. The Midland Terminal Railway ceased operating in 1949.